Hello and welcome to the MBA Rewired podcast, where we unpack the big shifts that are changing the future of careers, leadership, and management education. To launch our very first episode, we are asking a question that almost every aspiring management student must have asked at one point. Is management education evolving fast enough for a world that is preparing its students for? To answer this question, we are joined by Dr. Avantika Tomar, who is a partner at EY Parthenon, where she leads the education sector. And she's someone who has worked at the intersection of industry and academia. Hi, Avantika, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Farhana. Thank you for having me. I'm super privileged to be here.
So, we're really excited to have this conversation with you. And you've built a very rich and interesting career in strategy and organizational consulting. And you also are a visiting faculty member, and you've dabbled in academia. Not dabbled, actually, you've been very involved in it. So, please take us through that journey.
Right, my God. Okay, so look, I did a PhD very early in my career. Most people do a PhD once they've done a few years in the industry, they've figured out who they are, what
Right.
they want to do, and only then get into the world of academia. I guess in my case, Farhana, I was very clear right from the beginning that I do have a passion for teaching, right?
Right.
But I didn't want to be that professor who is talking straight out of a textbook, right? And I'm saying that as I'm sitting in your library. So apologies for that. But I wanted to be a faculty, a professor who can teach from real life experiences, right? And what better way to gain real life experiences, very many of them across sectors, across competency areas than consulting, right?
Right,
Because
absolutely.
consulting very early on can start to expose you into different sectors, which I did have the privilege of having as a strategy consultant. I worked in IT, in government, in education, of course, in sports, in financial services, in automobiles, in
Wow.
steel,
Okay.
thermal power plants, right? What have
So,
you.
right off the bat, you had a
Exactly.
lot
It
of
was very
experience.
easy, therefore, for me to start to connect the world of work with the world of academia, right? And which is why, I did that PhD early on and continued to, like you said, be a consultant Monday to Friday and a business school faculty over the weekends.
Yeah. So given this very interesting background that you have, you will always see that MBA aspirants, they're very interested in consulting as a career, and that hasn't gone down. Year after year, a lot of students want to get into this.
Yeah.
So what is it that makes it such an attractive career for so many aspirants?
I mean, on the lighter side, when you don't know what to do in life, become a consultant. Right? Because it's at least easy to find yourself, easy to find what are you drawn to,
Yeah.
what kind of sector, what kind of competency area, what discipline does really interest you, which, again, in the MBA of my time, and now thankfully things are very different, a lot of freshers used to do an MBA, right?
Right.
Which means that in and of itself, they had not the first clue of what they want to do, right? And therefore, consulting became a very good kind of learning ground to say, here is, let me spend a few years in consulting, get the tidbits across different areas of work, and then start to realize what is it that I feel most drawn to. So I think back in the day, it was genuinely, if you don't know what to do, become a consultant, you'll figure it out in a few years' time. Today, however, I think things are a little bit different. The skill set that consulting offers, Farhana, is still probably, and again, please take it with a pinch of salt. I'm a 100% biased as a consultant, but I think the skill sets that consulting offers are, they are the bedrock of any job that you will want to do, right? Whether that job requires you to do sales and marketing, whether that job requires you to be an expert in supply chain and logistics and management of movement, whether that job requires you to be a product person, right? So irrespective of which job or career type I pick up, the skills that consulting teaches you very early on in your career, right? And as we go through today's conversation, I'm happy to kind of enumerate what those skills are. But that builds a foundation that you can then apply to any career that you choose going forward.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that you say this, because it brings me to my next question. And oftentimes we see consulting as a very glamorous career because, like you said, a lot of people don't know what it is. So we'd like to know what it's like. What does a typical day or a week in consulting look like?
Oh gosh, you should ask all my associates and consultants who work with me. They'll probably tell you it's not as glamorous as it seems from the outside. But yes, I think let me tell you the glamorous part, but the not so glamorous part that you need to kind of earn your way. It's a rite of passage, right? So when you first start out as a consultant, whether as an undergrad student or post your MBA, the job, Farhana, is largely research and analytics, right? You're doing a lot of research. You're collecting a lot of data. You are doing a lot of fact finding, data gathering, right? So a lot of the initial heavy lifting that gets done in any problem that we solve for clients is about having that knowledge and that information first, right? Which is obviously done by the junior most members of the team. They are the ones, who are doing all the legwork. They are the ones who are in consulting, we say grinders, minders, finders, right?
Okay.
They are the grinders. They are the ones who are getting all the information for the minders, who are the managers typically, to then start making sense of, right? So initial months, years of consulting is largely about, like I said, gathering data, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of number crunching, right? So a lot of quantitative analysis, a lot of critical thinking. It then starts to be, and this is the least glamorous phase, right? Because you're largely sitting behind a laptop doing a lot of secondary research, or you're running around going to do, store visits, mystery shopping, doing surveys with actual customers, doing a lot of primary research. This is the least glamorous side of consulting, I would say. It starts to then kind of, like I said, it's a rite of passage. So the glamour starts after, where you are now having to make sense of a lot of this data, right? And which is where it's very powerful, Farhana, to tell a client or the owner of a business, and to tell someone who's been there, done that for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, to be half their age and to be able to tell, here's where you're going wrong.
Yes.
Here's my recommendation to you. This is the strategy I think you should adopt, right? There is a certain amount of power that all that hard work of data gathering and research and analytics and all of that, because the minute you go from that stage of consulting to perhaps drawing insights from that information, that gives you power. And that power, I think, is both glamorous, to use the word you have used, but also addictive, right? Because then you catch a sense of, I now know how to solve problems, solve business problems that business owners sometimes need external help and support and advice with.
Okay, now that you've established the fact that somebody who's just starting out in consulting, they'll have to go to the rigor. They have to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yes.
So as a student who's in their MBA and they're looking at building a career in consulting, what are some non-negotiable skills that they have to pick up during their MBA?
Yeah, so great question, Farhana. And again, I would love for students to really internalize this one. But first and foremost, I think curiosity, right? If I think about it now, I've now been a consultant for 13, 14 years, right? And I now see a lot of junior consultants coming straight out of business schools. I teach at business schools. I teach a course on consulting, etc., right? I often see the difference between a good consultant and a not so good one is just their inherent curiosity, right? A not so great consultant is in it for the wrong reasons, like I said, and therefore only doing what has been asked of them, right? The manager has asked me to collect such and such data. I'm supposed to build this Excel. I'm supposed to build this model. Then I'm supposed to take all this data and somehow put it in beautiful PowerPoint slides, right? If you come in with that mindset of, this is what I have been told to do, right? I think you've missed the point, right? Because in consulting, the most important skill, I would say, as you start out, is that inherent curiosity to say, yaar, kaise hota hoga ye? Right? Whether somebody's asked me to solve that question or not, how would this work in a company? Now, whether it is about steel pipes, which is inherently not the most exciting thing to think about, or it's about what product should the next big e-commerce brand launch, right? Now, some things will be of natural interest to people and they get drawn to it and are naturally more curious about it.
Absolutely.
This skill that I'm talking about has got to do with, I don't know how to do this, but how hard can it be? I want to find out, right? So that curiosity is, I think, I would say number one, Farhana. Number two, and it's probably linked to the first point, is just the ability to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? Because the minute you say, ab to MBA ho gaya, I don't have to study anymore, right? I think just that mindset itself is wrong, right? Because consulting is going to throw different challenges, different problems at you every few weeks.
Right.
An average project for me is 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks max, right? Which means every couple of months, you're having to completely switch your style of thinking because the client is different, the project is different, your boss is different, the city you are working in is different, the problem you are solving is different. And therefore, you can't kind of ever rest on the knowledge base that you're on and say, ab mujhe sab aata hai. That it just doesn't work that way. So linked to curiosity, like I said, that second thing is the ability to say, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to then very quickly unlearn and relearn because the next client project or the problem statement is completely different. So those are two, I would say, most basic pillars on which a consulting career is built, I would say. As you move up, obviously, as you move up the ranks from going from a consultant to a manager to a partner and so on and so forth, naturally your skill set then has to evolve. As a manager, client relationship building, team management, time management, budget management, all of that becomes very important. As a partner, then you have to build the business, right? You have to bring in new clients. You have to make sure existing clients remain. You have to be out in the market, have a point of view, build thought leadership, etc. So if these are loosely three kind of large hierarchies within consulting, each one has a step change of skill set. But the foundation for your MBA students is most definitely curiosity is one. Ability to continuously keep learning is the second.
So now that you've established this, and of course you meet a lot of aspiring consultants, young people in your team who are just starting out. So what are some of the skill gaps that you may have noticed recently?
Yeah, this will sound very pedantic, but I'll say it anyway. I think the skill gaps are not technical, Farhana. Most people, when they ask a question like that, they are expecting the skill gaps to be knowing about a certain domain, financial services, healthcare, aviation. Students ask me this question, God knows how many times, saying, for the interview, should I prepare for a certain sector? Avantika, you work in the education sector. If I'm interviewing with you, should I know everything about the education sector? My answer is no. Please do not prepare for sectors, right? What we are looking for is your ability to solve a problem. And your ability to say, I don't know, let's say this mic stops working, right? Now, I'm a mechanical engineer, but do I have the ability to open this mic and look at the wiring inside and then fix the wiring? No, right? Now, therefore, should I say I should never even attempt to do this because mujhse na ho payega? No. A consultant with the right set of skills will say, what is this? This is an electronic piece of equipment, right? There is an input, there is a process, there is an output. So if the mic is not working, only one of these three things can go wrong. What have you just done? You've actually taken something which seemed like an impossible to solve problem and you've broken it down into its constituent parts. The minute you do that, the first thing you will do is check the input. Is it even connected? Is the PowerPoint even on, etc., etc., right? I want somebody and students, and when they come and interview with me, I want that thought process. I don't know how to fix a mic, but how hard can it be? We are not sending a rocket to space. It's a mic. It's a piece of electronic equipment. How hard can it be? I think that ability to break a seemingly large, complex, multi-dimensional problem into its individual component parts and saying, chalo, ek karke solve karte hain. How hard can it be? Let's go one by one step at a time. We'll make sense of it. We are all smart, young intelligent people, why not? That, I think, is the mindset that I'm first and foremost looking for. That ability to say, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I want to take a crack at it.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is, and again, linked to the first one, doing it in the most structured way possible, right? A lot of students, and mostly I'm sure, Farhana, this happens out of nervousness because most interview situations are very high stakes.
Yeah, you're also
situations.
overwhelmed.
You're
and
overwhelmed,
yeah.
you're nervous, you've
Yeah.
got sweaty palms, jo aata tha wo bhi nahi soch pa rahe, right? Like, so it is obviously a difficult situation to be in. But the minute I sense in the candidates who interview with me that there is lack of structure, that they are, they started with something, jumped to something else, came back to something, then moved there, then moved here. Now I'm sensing, you're all over the place. Now I'm sensing you're haphazard in your approach. The minute I sense that, I'm just like, boss, abhi to there were 3, 4, 5 data points. Usi mein if you're getting overwhelmed, in a real client situation, on a real project, there will be 20 of these, perhaps thousands of these. Then what will you do? So I want somebody to be able to be structured in that conversation to the extent possible with the nervousness of an interview. And then finally, communication, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot make sense of any of this that I'm describing if you're unable to put your point across, right?
True.
And again, a lot of students, undermine the importance of the ability to communicate all of this in a systematic way, right? So problem solving skills, which comes with your ability to critically think about a problem. Most definitely structuring and saying it's a mic, but there are 3 things, right? That is structuring. And then finally just communicating your point. And when I say communication, it's 2 ways. So also listening,
yes.
right? Because most clients in my context and as an interviewer, I'm dropping hints. I'm nudging you in a certain direction. So even the ability to listen to those nudges, take the hints and then solve the problem, I'm looking for all of that.
Yeah.
So it's so simple. It's got nothing to do with healthcare industry knowledge and financial services, banking knowledge. It's got nothing to do with that.
But oftentimes it's the simple things that are actually very difficult to get around.
I don't want to use the word, but forcing students to become finance gurus and HR experts and marketing this and look at the jobs today, right? I'm sure your job, Farhana, includes aspects of all of this. How can you do your job today without understanding the basics of HR? You have a team to deal with, which means OB and HR are important for you. You have any marketing campaign that you run, there is economics of that campaign. Ki bhai, itna paisa I'm going to put in, and here is my return on marketing investment. There you go. We are talking economics and finance. So nobody should be coming and saying, I'm a marketing specialization. I'm a so-and-so. You need to be able to say, my core or my, my specialization as a expert is in marketing, but here's what I understand about every other discipline. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. And that's essentially what makes sense also. You need to be able to understand the sort of environment you're in.
Absolutely.
Without just zeroing in on one thing.
I mean, today's world, I don't think can absorb just one thing and make sense of it. It just won't work. It just won't work.
So, we've talked about structured thinking, you've talked about communication skills and all of these things. So, and of course, you interview a lot of students, whether it's for placement reasons or even internships.
Yes.
So, what is the basic difference between people who make it through and maybe, aspirants who don't?
What is good interview performance? I think good interview performance on a case study is first and foremost structured, right? I cannot emphasize that enough. You cannot be rambling. Right? You can't go from one thing, from A to Z to back to P to Q to B to C to... You've lost the plot, right? Because not only have you gotten confused yourself, you've also confused me. The minute we do that in a real client situation, the client will say, no, thank you, right? ऐसे ही solve करना था तो हम ही कर लेते, right? If we had to go in this very, very disorderly fashion, that my teams also can keep doing it in trial and error ways, right? It can't be trial and error. So structured thought process and therefore ways to approach the case study, I think most important. Having the presence of mind or the business judgment, like I said before, to say, I don't understand this sector, But if I were to solve this question using first principles, here is what I would do and think. That's the second. And then, just having the confidence to back yourself and say, how hard can it be, right? I think those are things that I look for sure. Like I said, it's absolutely fine to make math errors. It's absolutely fine to not know about the sector. What is not fine is to say, I don't know anything about the sector, can you tell me? That is not fine.
Like not
That's
to
not
try
true.
at all.
Not to even try at all. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. So in this regard, like you said, even you've been in this field for so long and you continuously have to keep relearning things and you can't just sit on your laurels and be like, I know it all. So do you think there is a change in consulting careers today, or is it the same basic principles that one should go back to?
Oh, no, there's a lot of change. So, gosh, if I take you down my memory lane, when I was a straight out of business school consultant, remember, data didn't exist in the way it exists today.
Right.
So for me, if I had to, let's say, compare the products of a supermarket, the only way to do that was to go to that supermarket and say, 10 tarah ki bread hai, right? A small loaf, a large loaf, a dense loaf, a wheat, a maida, a this, a that. We would literally take photo. I'm not even exaggerating, I'm really giving away my age now. But we would literally have to take photos in these store visits and supermarkets, come back, document that in an Excel spreadsheet and say there are 10 types of breads, 20 types of eggs, 40 types of milks. Correct? We had to do it that way. Today, what do you think my associates have to do? Go on the website, hit web scrape, everything gets documented in an Excel. That's how big the shift is, right? And I'm talking a space of what, 13 years, right? So the skill set required is, and therefore, the job, I personally think it was easier for me, right? It's harder for people starting out in consulting today. Even for companies, where we got our strength as a strategy consultant was from data. Hamare paas data hai, right? So the clients would come to us because we had proprietary information. We had proprietary data. Look at the world today. The same data that I as EY Parthenon have access to, every single one of my clients also has access to the same data. And therefore, the job today is much harder. Our power as a consultant, or our value as a consultant, was because we owned data that others did not. Today, data is completely disintermediated. Everybody has access to the same information. And therefore, unless you have the ability to process that data and get to an insight based on that data, what is your value to the client, right? So it's a lot harder today, but also I would say it's a lot more intelligent today. And I'm sure if we ask people, do you want to do a more intelligent job or a less intelligent job, I'm pretty sure everybody is going to say more intelligent.
Absolutely.
So it's a bigger challenge, no doubt, but at the same time, it almost kind of forces you to think more, to apply yourself more. So I think it's fun. I would love to start as a management consultant today than in the era that I started in.
Oh, that's interesting.
100%, I would say that. 100%.
Okay. So all of this, we've established the need for skills, that there is a gap in skills, and but what brings me to the most important question, and I think that's why we have this podcast also, is we want to know how B schools now need to reinvent themselves to stay relevant in a world like this.
Yeah. I think, again, it's probably a bit out there, but global business schools, like business schools globally, internationally, many of them are doing this, Farhana. So I think we must take a leaf out of their book. We also need to, you use the right word, completely reinvent ourselves. I think we are doing a disservice to our students if we keep teaching them finance, strategy, marketing, HR. I don't know which job today needs you to do only finance and nothing else, needs you to do only HR and nothing else. I teach a course on strategic human resource management. I teach economics of HR as a part of that course, right? Because every HR decision, think about it, every HR decision is a cost to the company.
True.
The minute you have cost involved, you need to teach your HR students what is the economic rationale for taking a decision that you're taking, right? How can you make HR experts without giving them understanding of economics, finance, etc., etc. Now, business schools in the country would argue, but इसीलिए तो we are teaching core courses. That's why we have a term 1 and a term 2 and a term 3 to teach core courses, so that you have a fundamental foundation of all disciplines, and then students take their electives to become specialists at marketing and HR. I just don't think that's enough, Farhana. I just don't think that's enough. I think what we need to do is we need to work backwards from what jobs require our MBA graduates from day one. Every firm, us included as EY Parthenon, we have to do a lot of training to freshly minted MBA graduates to make them deployable, to make them productive in strategy consulting, which is what I do. I'm pretty sure you pick up any corporate organization in the country, they'll say the same thing. That we go, we hire MBA graduates, then we bring them on this side, then we teach them workplace readiness, then we tell them, bhai, tumko ye kaam karna hoga, this is how this work is done, we put you through a training program, and then they start actually working. Why? Why are we forcing our corporates and our consulting firms and our banks and our whatnots to retrain a freshly minted MBA graduate? Why can't that teaching and that learning happen while they are in the business school? So I think what's needed, my view anyway, is building career tracks and building job readiness while students are in the business school, not after they have already joined the company, right? That readiness for the workplace, that understanding of the career, not a job. I'm choosing career as a word in particular. That needs to get done while they are still in business school, not after.
Okay. So, you talk about obviously the fact that the teaching in silos is not going to work anymore. So, what emerging roles or career paths then should these young management graduates be learning, or what should B schools then be offering?
Yeah. Fair enough. And again, this is probably my favorite question. So, I'll tell you, I went to one of the most premier institutions of the country to do my management education. I was a good student, Farhana. Probably too padhaku, but I was a good student. I joined one of the top tier strategy consulting firms right after that. Now, I thought, given I've been a good student, got that day zero placement, etc., life is set, right? Life is chill, which is what people always say, that bas ek bari
Placement
day zero,
ho jaye and you're done.
and then your life is set, right? I thought life is set.
Yeah.
But what I think I was completely gobsmacked by was the fact that my learning curve in this particular strategy consulting role was this steep. It every day felt like a mountain climbing initially, right? It was hard. It was really hard. So at some point I started to kind of almost question myself to say, if I've been a good student all my life, I wanted this job. Clearly this company wanted me because they hired me so quickly. Why am I finding this so hard, right? And I think the answer to that I found when I moved to Australia and I started teaching at University of New South Wales, where I realized, what do business school students want to become? They want to join PEVC. They want to become management consultants. They want chief of staff roles. They want product management roles. They want marketing and growth roles. If these are the careers that students want to build, why don't we teach this? So there was no course that was taught to me back then, which was called strategy consulting. And therefore, when I came back to the country 5 years ago, the first thing I did, Farhana, was took a leaf out of the UNSW's playbook to say, if PEVC is what students want to do, teach PEVC. Don't teach them just corporate finance with a few electives in finance and expect them to suddenly start performing in a private equity environment. If students want to become strategy consultants, management consultants, teach that. Again, can I take my learning curve, which was yay steep, and expect that, it'll become a fun ride, right? It won't.
It won't, yeah.
All you can do through those courses is at least make the learning curve a little bit less steep. And that's what I would urge every business school or business school education in this country to just think about if recruiters want something and students want that same career, why don't we teach that?
Yeah, that gap basically that has to
That
be
gap,
closed,
unfortunately, for
yes.
most of our schools, at least most that I see, I'm familiar with, that gap still remains. Yeah, right. Like if half the batch in any business school wants to become a consultant, right? Again, I'm saying this because, from the business schools that we hire from,
Yeah, it is a top
we
career
get,
choice.
if there are 480 students, 520 students in a batch, we get 400 CVs, right?
Yes.
Which means that it is
Yeah.
one of the most sought after professions. So if 400 out of 480 students want to become a consultant, teach that, na baba. Teach a course on consulting. Again, you can't teach a whole career in a 30-hour session. I get that, right? Like in 30 hours of a full credit course, you can't teach a career. You can at least sensitize students so that that learning curve, like I said, becomes a little bit less steep. That's my only kind of pet peeve, if you ask me. And that's why I said it's one of my favorite questions. But yeah, that's what's needed according to me.
Yeah. So, we've talked about what B schools can do to reinvent and all of these things. But of course, the main character here, the hero of our story, is the student.
Yeah.
Right? So, just coming back to consulting, if somebody wants to build a long running career in it, and if I'm like, say, an aspiring student who's just joined an MBA, so what kind of a mindset, what kind of skills do I then need to build to make like a long lasting career? Because the landscape is changing really fast. What recruiters want is changing. So in light of all of that, what should an aspiring MBA student be like?
Yeah, great question. I'll give you a very tactical answer, but hopefully this will help your students, Farhana, and all students, prospective students watching this. First and foremost, if you have a fundamental fear of numbers, right, solve for that. I don't think you can become a management consultant if you don't like Excel, right? A very tactical answer, I'm sorry for that, but I have to say it because I see a lot of people with good problem solving skills, but with a fundamental, like I said, either fear or inability to build an Excel model, I think nahi chalega. So if you are an aspiring MBA student who wants to eventually become a management consultant, I would really, really, really strongly urge you to take up some courses. And today, you don't even have to do an MBA for this. Like YouTube can teach you everything, yeah, right? So if you're diligent enough, you should be able to pick up a few courses on any one of the upskilling, providers today. Just go on YouTube, start learning how to build financial models, right? So that's kind of the first most tactical advice I can give. Second, and in the same breath, I would say storytelling, storyboarding, just the ability to take a complex message. And really, I mean, in my classes, I say you should be able to create a nursery rhyme out of it, right? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. You should be able to tell any complex business story as simply as you would to a 7-year-old niece or nephew, right?
Yeah.
If you can't do that, right? If you don't have the ability to take something that complex and put it down into simple English, simple words, make it seem like a story, which is exactly what storytelling, storyboarding is. Again, it's a fundamental skill, doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, but can be finessed over time, right? So I would urge prospective MBA students or current MBA students to really start thinking about, we loosely call it the elevator pitch. If you meet the CEO of the company on the ground floor and you're both going up till the 7th floor and both of you happen to be in the lift together, and if they say, what project are you working on? You should be able to define the situation, the complication, the question, and then what is the answer. Ground floor se 7th floor tak itna aapko batane aana chahiye. That is what elevator pitch is, right? Without getting into the nitty gritty detail of fir ye hua, fir aise, fir, like without some complicated, this data, that data. The CEO doesn't want to know, right? You have an opportunity to impress from the ground floor to the 7th floor. How would you do that? Practicing this is something that I would again urge your students as well as your prospective students to just start actually genuinely thinking through that. ये 2 चीज करके आओ आप, बाकी हम सिखा देंगे.
Thank you so much, Avantika. This has been very interesting, and I think you've busted a lot of myths that we have about
I hope so.
consulting. Because we always think that it's these big fancy things, and you've broken it down to very easy to understand things that students can do, that B schools can do,
Yeah.
and what they should be looking at when revamping their curriculum.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. This has been very interesting.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I really hope this helps. Thanks.